And welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I am your host, James Just, and with me tonight is Mr. John Cameron. Tonight we are deeply saddened to announce the passing of Charles Byrd, the chair of the Libertarian Party of Stanislaus County. Charles succumbed to stage 4 pancreatic cancer on Saturday, January 11th in 2025. He is no longer suffering. Charles was a fierce advocate for liberty, and the gravity of his loss to the liberty community cannot be measured. Our hearts go out to his family, friends, and community. Rest well, Mr. Byrd. You are missed.
Well spoken, James. Well spoken, and heartfelt. It's obvious to see, and I think it's this would be a perfect time to have a report from the fields about from Mr. Richard Fields. They're always great to see on California fires.
Hi, this is Richard Fields with this week's report from the fields. As I write this tragic tale on Tuesday, the Pacific Palisades fire has already incinerated 5,300 structures and is only 17% contained. The Eaton fire has consumed over 5,000 structures and is 35% contained. Dry conditions and hurricane-speed Santa Ana winds have contributed to the destruction by fire of over 40,000 acres of urban land. At least 24 people have died. For comparison, the Great Chicago Fire of 1871 killed 300 people, destroyed only 2,112 acres, but at 17,500 more buildings. But the LA fires are still burning. The winds are still blowing, and there is no rain in the forecast. Naturally, a lot of blaming is going on. Let me begin by pointing out that where the blame does not belong. Contrary to climate change scamsters and fearmongers, the cause is not climate change. The climate in the Los Angeles basin has been dry, and the Santa Ana winds have been blowing for centuries. Dashiell Hammett wrote Red Wind, a potboiler detective story which featured the Santa Ana winds. It was published in 1929, nearly 100 years ago. There is nothing new about hot, dry winds in LA. In fact, there is nothing new about fire in the LA basin. Before Angelenos paved and landscaped the city, it was dry grasslands and chaparral. Grass and chaparral fires were a regular occurrence. But on December 4th of last year, LA Fire Department Chief Kristen Crowley wrote a memo foreseeing dire consequences from a $17.6 million fire department budget cut. Among the areas cut was pilot training for water-dropping helicopters and deferred maintenance that took some firefighting equipment out of service. One area that was not cut was firefighter salaries. The fact that the nearby 117 million gallon Santa Ynez Reservoir had been empty for a year for maintenance probably contributed to fire hydrants growing dry. Meanwhile, billionaires like Rick Caruso, who ran for mayor last time around and lost, are hiring private firefighting crews at thousands of dollars a day. Successfully, it seems. Caruso's Palisades Village shopping center is still standing. Multi-million-dollar mansions across the street have burned to the ground. Nowhere is it written in stone that firefighting should be a public service rather than a private service paid for by property owners and their insurers. Municipal fire departments are notoriously subject to crony politics and overspending in less than optimal ways. Private firefighting companies, whose motive is to make a profit by providing a service that actually prevents and quickly puts out fires, don't have that problem. Something for Angelenos to ponder as they sift through the ashes and try to figure out how to rebuild. In the long run, it would be more effective than begging the federal government to please help us. That's this week's report from the fields. See you again next week.
Thank you, Richard. You know, these fires are a national tragedy, really. They're not just a California tragedy because so many people from California have come from somewhere else. The effects of this emotionally will ripple across the country.
Are we going to talk about the private firefighters?
Yes, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Right, yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I know you're emotional about your friend right now, so I'm.
Yeah, I appreciate that, John. Well, this whole fire thing has got me emotional because we live in California, and fires happen, right? They've been happening for centuries. It's not going to change. And the reason you have these low scrub brushes in Southern California is because fires happen routinely, and so they never get to grow. But we have not cleared these brushes. We have not allowed them to burn themselves. And you couldn't have stopped the fire, but you could have mitigated the worst of it.
Au contraire. I think, you can't. These fires start in Southern California, but what firefighters do in those situations, which we don't do in California, which they were supposed to do and train for, but because of where the money is spent in their massive budgets, they still have massive budgets, it's spent on retirement and silly DEI programs and community engagement, and did I say massive retirement and massive salaries and all the rest of that. It's not spent on equipment. In this fire, firefighters should have been pre-positioned. Firefighters' response time should be much higher. Whistleblowers are coming forward right now and giving examples of response time to fires in LA, response time to medical emergencies and accidents in LA compared to what it used to be. If you're cutting, even if you're getting good value for your dollar, and you cut $18 million out of a firefighting budget, because of the hyperinflation, not quite hyper, the massive inflation we've had in California, especially in the cost of goods and services, if you're only spending exactly the same that you were spending on firefighting 5 years ago, you're actually spending 20% less. So if you cut that, you're spending 30% less. And the only way to stop the Santa Ana wind-driven fires is to put them out quickly. And the only way you can do that is if you have lots of engines in lots of places ready to jump on the fire and respond, and they didn't have that. And also, the radical environmentalists, and there's actually a Save the Chaparral nonprofit in Southern California that won't let them clear the chaparral or do back burns. Those people should personally pay for having these houses rebuilt. I'm sorry, I'm on a rant again.
There's a whole laundry list of mismanagement here, and I think that's kind of the point, right? Yeah. You talked about how they cut $17 million, which is bad enough, right? If you're a well-run organization, you cut $17 million, you're going to have to narrow your focus so you can still do your priorities well. But they didn't do that. They widened the focus and took resources away. And so of course you're going to start to fail. Of course the systems are going to crash under stress, and that's what happened. Yeah. And one of the things we talked about, the private firefighters, a role private firefighters can play in that is no firefighters had to deal with that shopping center.
Yeah. No, and that's what really upsets me about the left and their crazed notion that government does things better than private industry. We have basically government mandated garbage collection in a single contract in Sacramento, and I'll guarantee you, my car will probably get firebombed after I say this, but if you went out and bid out those services somewhere, you could get them done faster, cheaper, and more often. And so every time you give an important service to a public employee union, basically, and cronyism, because like Richard said in his report from the field, cronyism and backhanders and all the rest of that in fire departments is, Cal Fire had a secret $30 million slush fund they were sending people to training in Hawaii from that nobody in the government supposedly knew about. And they defrauded some, anyway, I could go on and on and on. But Cal Fire, what money should be spent on in California, because we know what's going to happen, we know there's going to be chaparral fires, is clear the fires. And we know you can't stop it once it's a conflagration. Make sure you have firefighters in place to not let it be that. And that's all you need to do. Yeah,
and I wonder how many people in our audience don't even realize that private firefighters are a thing. That you can actually hire private firefighters. I
want to try to figure out how to. I live right next to the American River, and in the summer, the homeless population, which is basically you know, it's a tool for government agencies to get money. It's like in India where they blind people and put them on the street corner so that people will come by and give them alms. That's what homeless people are for California. They set the American River Parkway on fire, and I live literally right next to it. So I would love to have a private firefighting organization come and I'm going to look into how much it would cost.
Yeah,
because mine's only one little tiny house.
For those of you, the socialists out there, just think about it. If the rich people can afford the fire services, they're still paying their taxes. They're still paying for the services you're not going to give them, while they're still getting the services at a better
they're basically
services.
paying for your firefighting because they pay lots of taxes, and not using it because they're paying for it again. So don't be pissed off about it. It's stupid.
Yeah, it's stupid to be mad. Talking about stupid, this is a nice segue, John. Thank you for that. Meta is ending its fact-checking program and is introducing community notes, which, you know, Musk once again found the right solution to the problem. Imagine that. Someone thinks outside the box.
I want to say right now that sometime soon we need to draft Elon Musk into the U.S. military so we can give him a Medal of Honor. Because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't know about Twitter files. We wouldn't know about all the skullduggery. We're going to talk about something else, which is disgusting, that they've been sweeping under the rug, except for him bringing it to everybody's attention. But anyway, go on. I'm jumping in about Elon.
Yeah. So they're changing the community note. And the thing that, what was laughable to me is the fact-checking organizations, which have now lost their golden goose, right?
Yeah.
They've lost their meal ticket
and their ability to 1984 us.
And so now they're saying we never silenced anybody. We never played part in that. So no, okay, not directly. No, you didn't once go and push the button on X and say you're banned, but you gave them the information and said these people should be banned, and then they banned them.
And you got your direction from the federal government and NGOs, which are tools for the federal government.
Yeah, it's so much of this is people from certain political things getting money from the government for allegedly non-political actions that end up being political actions in the long run. And it's actually rampant. It's far more rampant than we know. It happens in public radio, public media, anywhere where the government is handing out lots of cash. People who are friends of are going to try to find it.
I would say if you just eliminate all government grants, all of them, just eliminate them now. Yeah, I know some of them go and do good things, but so many of them are just slush funds paying off political cronies, and so many of them go to biased political activities, which are horrid. Those radical environmental organizations I was talking about get government grants, folks.
And it's not just the radical. You have people who genuinely believe they have a centrist perspective. They genuinely believe they're out representing their wider audience, but they don't. And so for them, they think they're doing the right. They really, like Jimmy Carter, they believe they're doing the right thing, but they're not.
They represent 2 or 3% of the population.
Yeah, they're representing their view.
The other radicals.
And they're not representing the center. They're not representing the people on the other side of the political spectrum. They're just representing those closest to them.
And the thing about this is that if the shoe was on the other foot, if the people on the right somehow controlled the media and had the fact-checking done, which they did years ago, and then the somehow liberal people decided that they wanted to be fascist censoring machines, they'd be screaming, because you can't put control of the truth in the hands of the few. The masses need to know every single viewpoint, and they will pick and choose. The populace is not as stupid as the powers that we let be think they are.
No, just because they let you get away with something doesn't mean they haven't seen you. Yeah. So speaking of getting away with stuff, John, we're going to move on again. A Nevada judge has told Nevada cops they can't stop people traveling the states, seize assets from their car, give it to the feds, so the feds give 80% back. That's against the law, because Nevada has a law that says you can't steal assets from people.
And this is how I love the labels that people in government put on things. They call this equitable sharing, folks. So these are people who've never been convicted or even accused of a crime. It's basically, literally, highway robbery in this case, because it happened on the highway. And then they gave it to the federal government, and then the federal government gave them back 80% of it. Therefore, they didn't do asset forfeiture. It was the federal government. And a Nevada judge said, no, we've already told you can't do this, so stop doing it.
Yeah. And the thing is, Don, they are violating state law. Why are none of them in jail? Why are none of them have criminal records? Why are none of them going through the process of saying you violated the law? It's clear.
Because this other thing that I'd love for us to get rid of, but I don't think it's ever going to happen, called qualified immunity. Yeah.
Yeah. But
that
this
was invented by a very liberal Supreme Court a few years ago, folks. Look that up.
Yeah, qualified immunity has been one of the most disastrous legal perspectives that we have seen.
And what's even worse is that some people have absolute immunity in their jobs. District attorneys.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's actually absolute. I mean, they couldn't walk up on the street and shoot somebody. Maybe they could. I don't know. But you sure can't. They can literally hide evidence, lie about evidence, manufacture evidence to put people in prison, and nothing ever happens to them.
The very worst thing that can happen is the bar can disbar them, right? That
never happens.
And it's never happened.
Never happened.
Yeah, never happens. No. And so, but for us libertarians, that is a huge win.
Yeah.
And it's not just Nevada. Like 8 other states, 14 other states, I forget the exact number, have similar laws where the state has said, no, you cannot.
So I think it's even more than that. It's in the 20s.
You cannot do this shell game where you're going to pretend that you're, and the thing is, they're accusing the money of committing a crime as if the person isn't the money. It's like money cannot commit a crime by itself. It needs a person to actually.
Only guns can commit a crime by themselves. Money can't.
Apparently cars can too.
Money can't. Only guns.
Okay, John, we've been kind of joking around, having some fun on this topic, but this next topic
is way too important to talk seriously about, bro.
There is no way to talk about this next one in a fun manner.
This one. Oh man.
For those of you who haven't been paying attention, over in Britain, starting about 15 years ago or so, it became to light that there was. How am I going to put this for a polite audience? There were gangs of people who were using underage ladies as toys, essentially. Yeah. And it turns out it was not just, isolated incidents. There seems to be a widespread.
In one town, a small town, 1,500 underage girls were victims of sexual abuse at the hands of primarily men from Pakistan and Bangladesh. And the cops looked the other way. They didn't pursue it in many of the cases because they were trying to be sensitive to the people who had come quite legally into their country from different cultures. And this has been hidden, not talked about. People who've tried to pursue it have lost political positions. Reporters have been canceled who've gone after it, and it's been swept under the rug. And then Elon got wind of it and used his 250 million followers that he has to start promoting it again. And now they're actually taking a hard look at it. And they're actually not mad at the people who committed the crimes right now. They're mad at the people that exposed the crimes. Yeah. And so it's a stain on the United Kingdom. It's a stain on Britain. It's a stain on the morals of the world to allow something like this to happen. Now, anyway, I'm going to go on a rant on it, so you go ahead and rant on it for a while.
It's actually worse. It's hard to believe something like that can actually be worse than the event itself. But somehow, due to policy being more important than people, we have allowed it, not we, the UK government, the people of the UK, us in the world, have allowed this to go, what's the word, undealt with.
Unpunished, undocumented.
Right? Yeah, it is so it is so not understandable as how people whose literal jobs are supposed to be, they go into law enforcement, you go into social services because you allegedly love people, you want to help people who are in these exact kind of situations, and you do nothing. Not only do you just not do nothing, John, you cover it up and you help it continue.
These aren't adults who could make a decision. These are described by the people who did this to them, white slags. And I don't know if I can even use that term. You might have to cut it out on TV. Basically, these are a lot of people are in care, which means that they don't have a mother and a father in the home. That's a single-family home. They're in a group home, something like that. They're ill-educated, they're poor, and they're taken advantage of. It happened. Some of the individual stories would just break your heart if you read it. But you need to read it because we can't allow something like that to happen here. And we need to, we have this special relationship with the United Kingdom. We need to put pressure on them to do something about it.
Yeah, we can't. And the thing is, you know, last week they wanted to do an inquiry, and the current government kind of squashed the inquiry. And just today they're trying to backtrack. They're going to do a review. They're calling it a review instead.
A full inquiry. And then they'll discover how they themselves swept it under the rug for the last 15 years.
Yeah, we don't really need an inquiry. We actually know exactly what has happened.
Yeah.
And all we need to do is hold people accountable.
Yeah.
And that's what actually needs to happen. Okay, we're going to move on. Internal Republicans, the Republicans are fighting internally over immigration. You know, there's a big, huge deal that, you know, Republicans are kind of fighting over the H-1B visas, right? I think it was the big fight.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people are saying, well, it's about racism. Yeah, other people are saying that it's about culture. Other people are saying it's about, you know, morality, what's right, because.
And other people are saying that it's basically dollars and cents.
Yeah.
And you know the Trump gang, I don't want to call them a gang. Trump built a strange coalition of tech multi-billionaires with deep pockets. Unfortunately, they only spent a third of the amount of money that the Democratic Party did, but they won. Note to history there. You can't spend your way out of stupid. And people, basically blue-collar people who don't have jobs because factories have gone away. You know, the skills that they have that were once valued and in many cases pretty good paying jobs are now being done in many cases by immigrants. And so on the one hand, a lot of the people that voted for Trump saw all these immigrants, especially illegal immigrants, as a threat, and he rode their backs to the presidency. On the other hand, these people with the deep pockets depended on these H-1B visa folks to help their bottom line, basically, because they're getting skilled programmers for, I think, 1/3 of what they would cost on the market. And so it's going to be an interesting fight. But, you know, just we have so many freaking rules in this country and so many carve-outs and all the rest of that this kind of stuff's bound to happen.
Well, here's the thing for me, John. I'm actually good to see this happen. I like, not because of the policy discussion, I like the fact that MAGA, that group, is not as monolithic as people think.
No.
They're not just going to take marching orders. They
No.
are going to actually consider the various positions. Whether we agree with them or not, at least they're thinking.
Well, and then the guy that everybody's blaming for everything, at least on the left, if it wasn't for that pesky Elon, everything would just be going smoothly. If it wasn't for the Twitter files, we wouldn't know about censorship.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah. So yeah, he backtracked. He said, well, I can't repeat what he said to the Republicans on the air, but look it up. It's pretty. Elon basically shoots from the hip.
Yeah.
And he's not embarrassed about what he says ever, which I really like. But sometimes he'll rethink it.
Well, it's funny.
Yeah.
They like him. They like when he does that to the other side. You can't complain too much when that gun on occasion gets to you.
Yeah.
So John, Biden admitted his biggest disappointment the other day.
This is disgusting.
And so, okay, so our folks out there, John obviously knows, but what was his biggest, John, what was his biggest disappointment of everything, of all the stuff that he has done or not done, all the things he has done and failed on?
Is he couldn't do something about all the misinformation out there. He was in charge of a government that was censoring basically everything. COVID response, the Hunter Biden laptop, the Biden crime family, created the Russian Gate hoax. This is the most rife with misinformation and disinformation government that we have ever had in this country. And he's upset about misinformation, which means he's upset because he couldn't control the narrative. But the man literally believes that even though his son got off scot-free for heinous crimes that would get us thrown in jail at age 16, that he was persecuted. So you have to understand where he's coming from. But the left is just certain that everything that's happening is misinformation and disinformation. If it wasn't for that, they'd still be in power.
Yeah, and I got two things. One, you know, the First Amendment is pretty clear. The government has no business dealing with information. It can distribute its own information, but it has no business in deciding what other people talk
and anything that chills, right in the Constitution, chills another person's ability to express themselves honestly is
a violation, right? So there's the first one. So clearly he doesn't understand his role, right? So he clearly doesn't understand the role. And the second is, I still can't get over this. Of everything, we've had economic disasters, we've had environmental disasters,
Afghanistan
disaster, but it's the ability to deal with misinformation. It tells you where their priorities are. I think we really should listen about where the priorities of the political far left really are.
Yeah.
They want to control you and me, what we hear, what we see, what we do.
1984, bro.
Yeah, it's done. And we've got 45 seconds, John, so we're out of here. Thank you for being here tonight, John. I appreciate it. Thank the crew in there for working very hard, as they always do. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, thank you for being willing to sit in there and listen to us rant all the time.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't know if I'd do that every 2 weeks.
All right, have a good night, and please remember to love everybody.